really have to start, but you have to start thinking package. You have to start thinking, how does this look? How can I present this video-wise in addition to what my printed piece is going to be? So I think you guys really have to, you have to be prepared to do it all because you will be asked to do it all. And if you can't do it all, you will not make it in this business anymore. I mean, that's just the reality. So prepare yourself while you're here. Make certain that you do those things. When you're doing projects, make sure you come out of it with some great, solid packages. I mean, because that's what's going to help you get jobs, and that's also what's going to help you sustain your career for long years.
I agree with all of the points that these guys have made before me. And taking John's point about classes, one of the things that I did while I was here was I took a lot of 300 and 400 level classes because I wanted interesting classes. I wanted classes that challenged me, even to the end. It probably hurt my grade point, but that's what I wanted to do while I was here. So I took classes that were kind of outside the norm. The thing that I would suggest to you guys is that this is a training ground for you, and I think you need to use this opportunity to be creative and take some risks and really have kind of fun with what you're doing so that you can go into the real world, knowing, what works and what doesn't work. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to take those risks and are afraid to be creative thinkers when they're in college in terms of writing because they don't want someone to point out their flaws. But that's what this is for. So I would advise you to go ahead and, take some risks.
When you all mentioned the importance of experience, but what about the knowledge of what rights you have as a journalist? Access is a big problem here at OU these days, dealing with coaches or players, even administrators. What should kids be aware of, or what rights as a journalist have you been aware of and been able to employ over the years as a sports journalist?
Yeah, what's the AP guys? I've always found in terms of access, like in terms of being able to, for lack of a better term, assert yourself. It usually increases as you get older. Like I can get people on the phone. I can do things now that I couldn't do, when I worked at a paper at the Journal-Gazette in Fort Wayne coming out of college. The AP carries a name. Just like ESPN, MLB, you can do certain things as you get older. In terms of, no matter what situation you are, if you're a student and you're having trouble with access right now at school, you have to lobby what you have. You know what I mean? You have to be able to say to the coach or the administrator or whatever you're talking about, I work for the Post, I'm getting your voice directly to students. It's important that you grant me the time because the students are the people, in many cases, they're paying salaries and things like that. I mean, you have to lobby your situation, I'm at WOUB, these people watch, what I'm doing. That's the best thing. No matter what situation you are, you have to be able to spin it, present it in a way that makes you sound, in many cases, more important than you probably are. So and if you do that the right way, you can get people to listen to you and make time for you. But there is an art form to that. It's another thing you're probably learning as you go along in school and stuff.
I would add in, one of the most important things is show up, and show up regularly. Because when you show up regularly, you'll get the respect of people you cover. That when you show you're there, you're going to be there every day, you're going to be at practice. I mean, I remember being at the Post and having a problem because our college basketball, our women's team's basketball writers didn't know what time practice was. They couldn't figure it out. And they were fighting with the coach. We never really understood it, and we just didn't get it because I think I was always there. I covered the men's team for 2 years, and I was always there. And I think that helps break it down a lot. Now, from what I've heard from talking to students and reading, I try to keep up pretty regularly, is this athletic department is a lot more professional, I think it was, than when we were here. We used to watch practice. They used to let us play after practice. You guys would have 3-on-3 games on the floor. It seems like things have tightened up a little bit, so I know that's a problem. But one thing is, it's not just asserting yourself; it's getting to know people on a personal level, and that's the best advice I can tell you. And Anthony, especially as a baseball beat writer, you're there every day, so you know that
they're
for
there
sure.
every day, so you're there every day. And there's I noticed that transitioning over from being on a beat to being, more of a national guy is you lose that a little bit because you're walking on cold every clubhouse you go into. And you have some relationships with certain guys, but there's definitely something said for just them knowing your face just from seeing. And I find that, and it's frustrating, but it's just a fact that your outlet matters. Jay kind of hinted at that too. I mean, I speak so loud, isn't it? Sports Illustrated and ESPN are going to get better access than some small town newspaper. It's just the way it is. So that's frustrating at times, but you just have to, the more you deal with these people on a regular basis, you develop that presence, and hopefully that goes a long way.
Now, what I would add to that is this: at the end of the day, access is what it is. You have to figure out a way to make the best of whatever's given to you, and you have to sometimes, and especially when you're covering colleges, college coaches have a lot of control. That's why a lot of coaches, you see guys like Nick Saban, and other coaches who maybe are gaining some interest from NFL teams. They don't want to go because you can't go anywhere else and get the kind of control that they have in terms of how they limit you guys. So what you have to do is you have to learn how to work within the parameters of the rules. If you're not going to give me access to your players, then I'm going to figure out how to get access to them other ways. So whenever one door closes, you got to figure out how to open up another door. That's what we do as reporters. This thing is not easy. It's not meant to be easy. I'm telling you. You're going to have to work hard, and you're going to have to. You always have to be thinking. If you're just like, okay, well, this coach, he's not going to let me talk to this guy, or this coach isn't going to talk to me, it's a wrap. Then you missed it. You missed the boat. You have to figure out a way to get the information still, because we have a duty to the public and to the leadership to give them the access or give them the information that we know that they need. And there are more ways to get it than just going straight through. So you have to figure it out, and that's what your job is. That's what my charge is every day. I can't go to my editor and ever say, well, Coach so-and-so would talk to me, or Coach so-and-so would let me talk to this kid. My editor doesn't want to hear that. That's why I don't have the story. I got to figure out a way to get the story. We all do. So it's incumbent upon us to figure out ways to break down those barriers. Because trust me, they're going to make it tough. If you guys think it's tough down here now, wait till you get in the real world. I covered Notre Dame football, where they gave us access once a week, and we had to cut. I had the full slate of stories to do, but one day of access, and I guarantee you, I filled out that entire document each week because that's what I had to do.
And one way to get that access is phone numbers. Always ask for phone numbers. And in college, parents of athletes are usually willing to talk, and you can get to them a lot of times. Doesn't make the athletic department happy, but if they're going to have problems with you, if they're not going to give you access to who you need, that's one way to push it a little bit. And I can't emphasize what John and Anthony said enough about showing up. I always tell students that showing up is about 80% of this game in terms of developing sources. You've got to be there.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that too. I think showing up is definitely something that I always think of when I was a young pup right out of college. I worked at a paper in Fort Wayne. They sent me to a sports writing conference, and I remember it was in St. Louis. And Bernie Nicholas, who's a great columnist of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, great follow on Twitter too. If he doesn't, somebody look up. He told this great story about. He wrote a column about Ozzie Smith, and he was critical of him, something like that. Okay. And like a good columnist, he showed up. He showed up the next day when the columns in the paper. He showed up. Ozzie pulls him into a room and is just F-bombing him left and right, like tearing him to shreds, basically. Okay. Bernie goes on and becomes a game. Comes back downstairs. Is talking to Ozzie again because Ozzie's something game, and Ozzie's right as rain, like nothing's going on, whatever. And Bernie says, what's the deal, dude? You were F-bombing me earlier, and now we're acting like, nothing's wrong. And he said, you showed up, I said my piece, and now it's over with. And that's the way it is. If you're there in any situation, like with baseball especially, but in any situation, showing up, you earn the respect of the people you cover because they're there, and it means something. The people they get familiar with, they interact with. It means something to them when you're there too every day.
You guys have an advantage too because you're on campus, so you see these guys, you see these athletes, classes around campus, and you can talk to them in those situations. You know, the coaches may not like it, but if they're not going to help you out, I mean, that's another way. You've got email access to these people, Twitter.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of ways to get information out there right now.
Also in terms of, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but also in terms of access, it seems as though some journalists are using collaborations or even reporting for these franchises. Is that presenting any problems for you ethically as a journalist, or is it
Anthony.
or is it just creating even more problems, including Montecchio, or the fact that ESPN had to drop their story about concussions?
Well, it's an increasingly corporate business, and it's increasingly complicated when it comes to those where your interests and that sort of thing. I mean, there's newspapers owned by team owners in some cases. The Boston Globe is owned by the owner of the Red Sox now. I mean, how does that?
Who's now the publisher?
Who's now the publisher? Yeah. So that's there's all kinds of quandaries out there, and we're certainly in an interesting situation. We are the official website of Major League Baseball, so you do have to toe a line. I'm not saying you have to outright, praise teams that are awful, but you do have to. And it's something I'd encourage anybody in any outlet is just to be fair. And that's probably the number one rule in this business for me is just to be fair to the people you're covering, because I think sometimes we grow up in a talking head culture on TV where people are ripping people and that sort of thing. It could be, kind of entertaining and sometimes a sexy thing to be that kind of voice. But I think at the end of the day, you are